was your moment when you felt like you were surrounded by idiots? Story 1. When I was in high school and someone asked me how to get green paint, I said to mix blue plus yellow, and it makes green. Literally everyone argued with me, yelling and calling me stupid. I immediately lost all faith in humanity. Edit. To all the people commenting that green is a primary color, or talking about different things like pigment, how paints are made, etc., like I said, this was about mixing paint in a high school art class. The situation was that we had the primary colors red, yellow, and blue, nothing else. The assignment was to paint a specific full-color photo in the book on a specific page by mixing the colors. That's why they asked how to get green paint. They had to mix it in order to do the assignment. And that's what we were referring to. You're alright, but that's all a completely different thing than we were talking about in that situation. Opinion. Looks like they skipped primary school. Story 2. At a monthly meeting for all the department heads and supervisors, the general manager went around the room and asked, "Does anyone have any ideas on how we can make a good impression on the new regional boss who would be visiting?" Nobody said a word. I figured, well, I knew this person from working together at the previous property. I suggested something that he always harped on. 2 hours later, I was called into my boss' office and told I could no longer attend these meetings. Later on that night, a few of the upper management took me out for drinks and told me that it is expected not to offer any suggestions when the GM asks for suggestions. Put in my 2 weeks shortly after. It still makes me angry to this day. Opinion. I think that's one of the worst things you can make as a leader. Story 3. Every day I go to work in my local leisure center. The heat and humidity are draining enough, but it really gets you when parents come in with 2 children that can't swim and leave one of them alone. "Sir, ma'am, you need to stay with both of your children. They can't swim." "Okay, I'm sure they'll be fine." Child starts getting into difficulty without the parent seeing. Opinion. Tell them you need to keep an eye on both your kids, or soon you will only have one to watch. But then I'm sure the Karen would tell you, "But watching the children is your job. That's what lifeguards are paid for." Story 4. One co-worker told her boss's boss to come down to her office if he wanted something from her. One co-worker got a slice of bread jammed in the toaster and poked it with a fork. Our security guard accidentally shredded his paycheck. One co-worker terminated her apartment lease and had a removal company standing in the hallway without having a new apartment lined up. My sister-in-law had no clue why her 50 kilograms of surplus weight would contribute to her breaking her ankle while walking down some stairs. All in one day. I took the next day off. Opinion. Not today, Charles Darwin. Not today. And also, how do you accidentally shred your paycheck? Story 5. Working in retail. I sell phones while I'm on commissions, and sales are what paid my bills. 90% of my job is helping people do things with their phones that they could have figured out on their own with a Google search that would have taken 3 minutes, or next to no time at all, if they would have just read the screen and did what it said. No, I can't just change your Apple password. Yes, you have to call Samsung about your warranty. They really don't have a reason to speak to me. You're not hearing your ringtone because you turned the volume all the way down. I wish I was exaggerating, but anyone else who works in a cell phone store can relate. Opinion. Working in retail. Enough said. Story 6. I used to volunteer at an animal shelter as a teenager. I volunteered regularly, and was basically there whenever I didn't have school. But most of the younger volunteers were only there for a few weeks in the summer because their parents made them go. There was one summer I was training some of the younger volunteers on how to care for the cats and how to properly clean their areas and whatnot. They usually work up front with the healthy cats that are up for adoption. But that day, I was told to take them to the back and show them how to take care of the cats there. The back is where they hold the sick cats, strays, and kittens, and moms in the nursery. Obviously, they weren't ready for most of the cats there, so their job was to learn how to care for the healthy kittens. Now, every kennel in the back is clearly labeled right on front on whether they're sick or stray, if the cat is aggressive, whether or not it's being vaccinated, what medications it needs, all of that stuff. So of course that's the very first thing I teach them, to be aware of the labels and to come to me if there is any cat they're afraid to work with, or any labels they don't understand. So like 20 minutes pass and I'm busy mixing one of the stray's food. With its meds went from the nursery I hear, "What does feral mean?" "Who cares, I wanna pet it." Opens it up. I rush in just as this juvenile cat screams and lashes out, trying to scratch them. Of course, none of them had gotten rabies vaccines, but luckily, they had all jumped back in time to avoid getting scratched or bitten. I had to close the kennel and drape a towel over the door to help calm it down. I couldn't believe I had to explain what the word feral meant to a bunch of high schoolers and scold them for not following the rules and trying to play with aggressive, unvaccinated strays. None of them came back to volunteer. Opinion: good riddance. Story 7. Answered a simple question in chemistry class, and everyone, including the teacher, told me I was wrong. I knew I was right and looked it up. I was. Someone asked what BMX even stands for. I tell them, proceed to get called an idiot and laughed at because bicycles don't have a motto. Edit. Also in physics, my teacher said you could theoretically drop a coin from space through a hole in the earth and then pick it up on the other side because they have the same period. I pointed out that the coin would need to lose all of its velocity, otherwise it will just orbit in weightlessness. The teacher couldn't comprehend this and was sure it would just drop to Earth. He believed astronauts had to be tethered when they left the station to avoid falling to Earth, rather than to stop them from floating away. Opinion: how to lose faith in the educational system with 2 simple steps. Story 8. We got into a heated debate about whether plants would exist without humans because we watered them. Everyone thought plants would not survive without humans. Me and one other person were the only ones who thought otherwise. Opinion: I can't wait to see their reaction when they find out about the rain. Story 9. In a grade 8 social studies class, when I told my teacher the Great Wall of China could not be seen from space, and she said, "Well, yeah, and when were you in space?" And everyone laughed at me. Opinion: how can anyone be that clueless? And by the way, when was she in space? Story 10. When I was the only person in the class who knew that you don't just turn a computer on, you need to turn the monitor on as well. Opinion: that's a classic. I've lost count on how many people called the store I worked at to fix their computer, and we had to ask them, "Did you check if the monitor is on as well?" Story 11. A couple of young girls at the staff canteen said to the lady serving sausage parms, "So what animal is used for sausages? Is there an animal called a sausage?" Serving lady: "Oh no, I didn't know who I hated or felt sorry for the most." Opinion: that's kind of the equivalent of asking where the chocolate cows are that make the chocolate milk. Story 12. So I work at a doctor's office. Our office is always getting in trouble because we have the lowest rates of physicals booked. Despite being the biggest office within the system, we also have had a huge problem with follow-ups not being booked, etc. So one day, at a meeting with all the front-end workers, the boss made a comment about how we need to be checking patients out properly. One person who has been there 9 years, sitting at the checkout goes, "How do you check out a patient?" Now, this wasn't a clarification question such as, "What would you like us to do differently?" Oh, no, no, no. This woman meant exactly what she asked. She didn't know there was a checkout button or how to schedule a follow-up. She's been there 9 years. She sits at checkout. I don't get it. Anyway, so the other checkout woman during this conversation told her that there was a checkout button, but didn't know how to tell if they needed a follow-up. She's worked there for 2 years. When you click the button to check out, it says, on a full separate page, that you have to acknowledge in order to complete the checkout process. Come back in 1 year for physical. Needs follow-up 6 weeks, etc. I looked at my manager in complete agreement and banged my head on the table. Opinion. This isn't the checkout staff's fault. If management didn't notice for 9 years and only realized when the checkout staff admitted their lack of knowledge, that's a clear failure on management's part. Story 13. I was middle school age and I had just finished watching the Lion King Broadway show that traveled to my city. I bought a t-shirt that had Scar's face on the front, and it had the quote, "I'm surrounded by idiots." In the back it said Lion King Musical, or something like that. It was summertime and I went to tennis day camp at the time. I decided to wear the shirt. Well, towards the middle of the day, this one kid gets angry with me saying he's not an idiot. I try calmly explaining to him that it's just a shirt and not to take it literally. Suddenly, all of the other kids start joining him and being angry at me, telling me that they're not idiots either, and that I am an a-hole. For a few minutes I tried to calm everyone down, but to no avail. Eventually, one of the counselors comes up to me and tells me I need to change shirts if I want to stay there the rest of the day. Honestly, starting the day, I didn't think any of the kids were idiots. But after all that, I felt that the shirt suddenly became accurate. Opinion. I was really hoping someone would bring up The Lion King, because every time I read I'm surrounded by idiots, I can't help but picture Scar saying it. Story 14. When I was starting my second year in high school, in my geography class, we were put into groups and asked to find certain countries. We were to find Brazil, and the other 4 people in my group insisted that the entirety of Africa was Brazil. Opinion. To be fair, the general shape of Africa and Brazil is somewhat similar. It's not the worst mistake you could make. That's only excusable if you weren't looking at the full world map. But if they had the whole thing in front of them, there's really no excuse. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the bell button to receive notifications to my latest videos.